Hello and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show. This week, we covered two green vehicles that environmentalists probably won't like. There are a lot of crazy new supercars introduced, and we talked to Volkswagen about the updated Jetta and GLI. But first, a word from our sponsor. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, kicking us off will be a car that, Kyle, you drove, and it's, I guess, the ultimate M3.
It is. It's a little confusing. It's the 2024 BMW M3 CS. I guess I should start with that for people who aren't watching the podcast. The slightly confusing thing there is that we've already seen the 25 M3 and M4 at this point, and there is an M4 CS that basically takes all this and applies it to the coupe. But this was a limited production model for this year. And yes, for the time being, at that time, it was the most potent, most expensive, most M3. It's very subtle, as you can see with the neon green paint and then the red highlights and the gold wheels. Definitely blends in with traffic.
Yeah, is there any other way you'd get it? Like, it needs to be that bright green with the stripes and the chrome or the gold wheels. Yeah.
Like, I know that there was a gray one. I've seen that a few times around too, but no, you need it this way. It's definitely the most enjoyable M3 to drive compared to the M4 CSL, which was also a limited production model last year. That thing was rear drive only and kind of a handful. It felt like a track car because it was a track car. This is the same idea, but all-wheel drive in a sedan. So it's just a little more exploitable and fun. That being said, you're not going to really get to scratch all that unless you go on a track with it. It is totally overkill for the road. It's noisier, it rides stiffer. It has those ridiculous M bucket seats with the thigh separator. So any women who get into the car will hate it. At least from my experience, from having a few friends and family get in it during the week, no one liked it. There's no cup holders, which feels a little weird in a four-door. I get that it's a tracky car, but I mean, you're going to hopefully live with it every once in a while, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say all that because no cup holders. It's pointless to get it in a black color, seats that not everyone will find comfortable. It sounds like something I drove this week, which we'll talk about later, but it's a very different kind of car. So yeah, that just sounds like a lot of compromises for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. It is, like I said earlier, like the most entertaining M3 you can drive, but it's also 50% more expensive. So it's one for the collectors, but I really hope that every single one of them track it.
Yeah, they won't. All right, so, I'll have to cut that out. Chase,
yep.
Move it to this. So, moving on to the next one. I drove something green that's on the absolute opposite scale of what you did. So it actually really fits my forest motif here. As those watching may wonder where I am, I'm at a secret location, actually taking a little time off, but always have time for the podcast, right? When it comes to the Auto Guide show by eBay Motors, there's always time. So I drove the Jeep Gladiator Mojave X, which I just like saying like Mojave. I don't know why. It just feels like that's the way it should be pronounced.
Yeah, it's good.
So the Mojave has been around like the Rubicon before, but the X models are new to the Gladiator. So basically the Mojave X and the Rubicon X take those models and put on even more off-road goodies. And if you're not a Jeep person and you're wondering the difference, Rubicon's the rock crawling trail version, and this is the desert running version, hence the name. So this actually sits higher than the Rubicon, but it doesn't have like the front sway bar you can disconnect and stuff. It's designed with, it has the Fox shocks and everything. It's designed to, do high speed on the desert, which in relative speaking, because speed is not this Jeep pickup convertible, whatever you call its thing. It came in Sarge green, of course, it's got to play into the Army roots. So basically, the reason I drove it is there's a big update this year, better infotainment system, the new trim, and some other updates here and there. Overall, it still drives like the Gladiator, which drives like a Wrangler with a slightly longer wheelbase, which makes it a little straighter and track better on the highway. You don't seem to be doing as many minor corrections. And I did a video and I did the review, and I stated, it's not hard to drive this vehicle, but it just takes a little more effort than most vehicles. You need to use the gas a little more because it only has 285 horsepower, which is not a lot for something this heavy that's shaped like a brick. You have to do little steering corrections. The brakes require more physical effort. So it's a vehicle that is fine on the road, but great off-road. So if you're looking for something that you want to live with day to day and maybe take off-roading twice a year, this might not be your vehicle. If you're looking for something where you have to go across some rugged farm roads or whatnot on almost a daily basis to transport stuff, which a commentator in the video said that's what they do, like this is the perfect vehicle. It's very much a sort of specialized vehicle, and I like that Jeep has many different versions, so you can get what you need basically.
It's very interesting to me that they've kept the Mojave as pickup only, and it's never made its way to Wrangler.
Maybe it's the wheelbase. Maybe get a Wrangler going that fast, jumping dunes. I don't know. This isn't gonna. I think the Mojave is better than the Rubicon for the Gladiator because with that wheelbase and the pickup bed, you have a huge overhang and not as good breakover angles. I mean, of course, you can aftermarket raise it up. You can do it with the Wrangler. So this suits rutted roads and deserts and whatnot better than climbing a hill. Plus, if you're going on something too steep, everything will just fall out of your bed. But the two cool things about it is it has a manual. It has a manual in any trim, not just a certain trim or the base. So that's cool. You can get a 6-speed and right up the group, and it is a convertible. But name me another convertible pickup. You can't. So
the Chevy SSR.
Well, that's using pickup lightly, and you're dating yourself. That was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Hey, look, something that's green.
Yeah, we're on a definite trend for this one. Yes, I guess I'll take point on this one. This is the 2025 BMW M5, and it's a big deal because it's the first hybridized M vehicle outside of the XM.
This is like the XM's powertrain's kind of a version of it's being transported, right? Transferred.
Yes. Yeah, it's
which we always knew was going to happen.
Yeah, it made sense. So it's closer to the XM label in terms of outputs. It's a little different, but not very far off. But the other big news is that it's gained 1,000 pounds since the last one.
Yeah, when I read your title, because I like you got to sit in a pre-production and touch it and feel it and play around with it. So I knew nothing about it. And when the press release came out, you handled it because it's a car you knew. And then when I saw your title, I was like, oh, Kyle typoed. Gains 100 horsepower and 1,000 pounds. Like, I think he meant 100 pounds. Then I read it's like 5,300 pounds or something. And this is, I mean, they've grown, but this is like a mid-sized luxury car in the scheme of things. Like the 7 Series is bigger and the 3 is smaller. And it weighs as much as a pickup truck. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. I've seen some comparisons where that new Bugatti that we talked about on last week's episode, that weighs less than this. A Ford F-150 Raptor is within 100 pounds of this.
I was going to say, I drove the Ram 1500, and the Rams are on the lighter scale, I think, or was it the F-150 Limited? One of them was definitely like on that weight, and that's it's a half-ton pickup. It's crazy.
And so, I mean, like, it's tough, and obviously we can't judge it. Excuse me, until we drive it. One other weight thing. It somehow weighs more than the fully electric i5.
Turbos, gas engine, batteries, motors.
Fairly big battery. Yeah, so we'll see what it's like to drive because
it'll probably drive fine. It just drives heavy.
Yeah, and I mean, most of the weight will be down low, so you'll probably notice it more in very quick corners or very long ones, if that makes sense. Like, trying to change direction might be tough to do it as quickly as the old model because there's so much weight, but this also has rear steer, which is a first for a BMW.
That's nice.
So there needs to be some gap between this and the M3 and M4, and this definitely accomplishes that. I just, I've seen some people complain about how this is now slower to 60 than the last one. I mean, fractionally, but if we make it that every vehicle needs to be quicker than the last one, then we end up in our own sort of issue, right? Like if the focus is just on making cars faster every generation, they become less interesting. So maybe this is interesting to drive. I do like that you can have 25 miles or 40 kilometers ish of electric range. Like, I don't know. It's tough.
Well, as you said about making them, they don't have to be as fast as last gen, and I fully agree. But my approach would be like, you cut out 300 pounds and drop 200 horsepower, and it's slower, but it's more fun. This is like, hey, it's heavier and slower. Can we start to think that BMW has a weight problem? Maybe. I mean, that M2 is quite hefty too. Like, if they brought out an Alpina 7 Series or something along those lines, like, what's it gonna weigh? Is it gonna like rival the Hummer EV?
That's a fair question. It's like you can't get an M model that is under 3,800 pounds right now. I mean, unless you actually no, I think the CS is still closing in on 4,000 pounds. So it's going to drive fine. It's going to handle fine. It's probably going to have like 375 tires on or something. Like, it'll just have a lot of rubber, but it's just looking at the stats, you're kind of like, this is where cars have gone. Like, think of like the old 4-liter V8 M5s of old compared to this, but things have changed. They have.
All right. Well, one more before we take a quick break. So Volkswagen has released the, I guess you'd call it mid-cycle refresh. I mean, it kind of already had a refresh, but refresh.
Hey, we're having more of those recently, right? Like with this push for EVs, like a lot of ICE cars are just kind of having a second breakfast. I mean, second facelift. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because like way back in the day, like we're going ancient time, not ancient, but like 50s, every year there'd be big changes to a car, and that's because their money was just rolling in from manufacturers, and that's how they kept them relevant. And then as the years went on, I'd say 80s, 90s, it became sort of the 5-year cycle for cars. Like, it'd be a new gen, and that was, investment versus keeping customer. And like you said, it seems it's almost because cars are more computerized, you can do more updates without having to change physical things, it seems. But that's another topic. So the Jetta does have slightly changed styling on the front and rear. I mean, it's a Jetta, so it's very, I can tell the difference because I've driven one, but it's very subtle. The big difference is inside. Not only does it have the new infotainment system with the no buttons, which everyone should know our opinion on that by now, they've really given it some style. And I'm not going to get into too much more about it because we have Volkswagen on this episode to talk about the Jetta, so we got lots of questions for them. But the coolest thing, the GLI has a manual. It is the last manual in the Volkswagen range. We kind of talked about this when the GTI and Golf R lost theirs. I knew that the Jetta was keeping it, but here's the confirmation. So I asked in the questions why, and the answer is something I knew having been in the industry, but it's good to hear someone explain it. So we'll get to that later. I also assume when this Jetta is fully redone or goes electric or whatever, that's it. So this is it. This is your last crack at a Volkswagen manual, I think.
So go after it, because based on the pre-facelift, it's good.
Yeah. I drove the 40th anniversary and I liked it. So this should be better. All right, we're going to take a quick break, get a Project Genesis update. It is the wrap-up. It's not an update. I took it to the track last week. This week, I am using something to get some physical numbers. The car is slow. I knew it was slow. It's slower than I thought it was. I mean, in fairness, I just added weight without doing anything to the engine. And all the grip I added was more just for feel. So, you know what? It's fine. It looks nicer and it drives nicer. It's slow. I mean, it's like a 3,500 pound car with 210 horsepower. What do you expect? Anyway, we'll be back in a minute.
Yes.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Last week, I took my car on the track for the first time
even though I still don't have the brakes. This is the same day, but you're watching it the next week, because what I'm gonna do now is try to improve on the times I'm setting by using something called the Garmin Catalyst. It's a onboard computer that will record your laps, analyze it, and tell you where you can improve. Yeah, let me just show you what it is. So the Catalyst is a standalone system that comes in a box. It has a 7-inch screen, which is actually really big. If you remember Garmin GPS systems of the old, this is way bigger. And the goal behind this is it will record your laps by video and telematics using satellite. And then after you're done a couple sessions, it can coach you or train you on where to improve. It comes with a ton of cool features. You can upload your track times to a database. You can compare them. You can put in multiple cars and compare them down the road. And if you're worried about it having your local track, well, there's 450 tracks preloaded in here all over the world. I'm at Toronto Motorsports Park, which is a smaller track, and guess what? It's in the system. And if it isn't in the system, you can have it learn a track by mapping it out by driving around, and then you can go from there. So there's nowhere you can't use this except for on the street, track only. Due to the power of editing, I have most of the system set up. If you're gonna install this permanently, you do a much cleaner system. But up here's the camera that records the video. You could run this cord all the way through there like I have with my dash cam. This is the base that holds the main 7-inch screen. Everything plugs into it. Again, you could run the cords much cleaner, but I'm just doing this as a demonstration right now. So then the actual system just goes on there. It's magnetized as well, so it won't fall off. It can stick to your roof. It's very strong. Rip off the screen and power it up and off we go. Okay, now that it's on, it's very easy to use. Up here you got your settings, so you can change things like who's driving, update it, the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that. You can review your laps. We'll have some here in a little bit after we get out on the track. You can hear cars are out there right now. Up here is the profile, so it's my Catalyst. There's my car, Hyundai Genesis Coupe. And you can sync it if you have the Wi-Fi set up. I don't currently. And over here are your tracks. So you push tracks, and you can see they're all listed. There's so many of them. And I'm gonna search for the one I'm at, T-O-R-O. There, Honda Indy Toronto, Toronto Motorsports Park. So I click that, there's my track. So when you are ready to drive, after you've looked up your track, you can hit drive, and there it is at the top now. It actually knows where I am, so it has all the closest tracks. So there's Flamborough, Honda Indy Toronto in downtown Toronto, Mosport, or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park as it's called, and so on and so on. Take this, it's the normal configuration, the only one there is. And here we go, my Catalyst, my car. I can check the audio, start the lap timer, say if the track's dry or not. Right now it's dry. And off we go when I'm ready. So I'm gonna hit start and get on that track in a second. So I've been going slow out there trying to preserve what's left of my brakes. So if I hit review, it'll show my session. So there it is. That's as of today at the Toronto Motorsports Park. So yes, click that. I did 2 laps with the timer on, and I did a very slow 136.19. So if I click this, it says my top speed is 145. Click it again, and here it's showing how I did in the different sections. I can look at laps if I want. The optimal lap, if I nailed all my best segments in 1 lap, would have taken a second off my time. Can look at the segments themselves and see optimal and average, which is kind of cool. It even plays back the line I took on the optimal line going into one of these corners. So you can visually see, oh, that's what I did. Okay, I need to do that again. And then there's also opportunities. So if I click that, I can save 1/4 of a second by braking better in this corner, which I figured because I'm not braking that hard. And then you can see the deacceleration optimal compared to my average. So if I broke a little harder, I would gain a little time there. I can click on braking. And it shows me my braking and what needs to be improved. The apex, the speed, how much speed I took in and then slowed down and then accelerated out. and then I can go to opportunity 2, and it's saying down here at the hairpin, looks like the line I was taking was a little too wide. And then there's opportunity 3. So 3 sections on the track, it's telling me I'm losing a lot of time. I mean, I'm losing a lot of time everywhere, but those 3 sections specifically. So if I really look at those and go back out, I should theoretically go a little faster by improving those times. So I think we'll try that one more time before we wrap it up for the day. Oh, look at that. Using the coaching, I took over a second off my time, but oh, my optimal times dropped another 3/4. Guess this will be a never-ending chase. So the Garmin is an expensive tool, but it is a great tool if you're serious about lapping. It's like having a mini race team inside this little screen box thing. It gives you all the information you need to improve your laps and see where you're consistent and inconsistent and whatnot. It's also a great tool for someone like me that's putting different parts on a car and trying to upgrade things, because after each part, you can go do some laps and see if you're faster or maybe even got slower. I'm really curious to see what the car is going to do once I get the brakes, because as I've said, that is the weakest point of this car. And as you can see on my laps, it's the braking zones where I'm losing a lot of time because I A, don't trust these brakes fully, and B, need some brakes to get home still. But when I get those upgraded ones, I'll be sure to put this back to the test and see if my times have improved at all.
Okay, welcome back. We're going to take a quick look at the big news. It's mostly just about fancy cars. So the first one actually isn't really a car, but it is. So it's the Genesis 1540 horsepower concept, which is basically the VGT they made for Gran Turismo. This is the race version, which I assume they always planned, or maybe they just heard us all complain about how fast the other one was, but handled like terribly in the game. They did make a full-scale mock-up that they released at the Korea. I can't remember the exact name, but basically the South Korea Auto Show. And Kyle, you're definitely going to learn more about it, if not see it potentially coming up. So that's cool.
Yes, we'll wait till the wrap-up section of the podcast to go into that. But yeah. I mean, Genesis is doing what I think some of us from a certain era growing up and seeing concept cars all the time. Genesis is doing something that we really like. It's just wild out there concepts. I appreciate it. It's just, that convertible one that you saw a few years ago in LA that is gorgeous. Make them. Make something relating to them at some point, Genesis, please.
I know, and that one was so cool. And you have an existing platform you could potentially build it on, like let's just say the G80 electrified. And yeah, custom build like 15 and sell it for way too much money, and you'll get enough buyers. And then, yeah, it could be like you could have your own little bespoke range. But quickly about the car, so 1500 horsepower, and it makes over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. Our news guy Chase basically called them out as to something that is just ridiculous. So the gas engine, the supercharged V6, goes to 10,000 RPM, makes 870 horsepower, 790 pound-feet of torque. Like, that's all reasonable. Then there's the electric e-motor in the front that makes 670 horsepower, but 225 pound-feet of torque. Like, what electric motor in what world makes triple the horsepower over the torque? Like, I don't even know how you tune one that way. So
there have been a handful of that gap I've never seen before. There have been some EVs that have more horsepower than torque, but
yeah, like a little bit. Yeah, like we're used to seeing like almost 50% more torque than horsepower, and then there's some where it's very close or it's just slightly. But this is like a Honda engine from the 90s. It makes like 6,000 horsepower and makes 3 pound-feet of torque. Like it's so like they could get those numbers where they wanted them, right? But
I mean, it's Vision Gran Turismo, and as you and I have played a lot of Gran Turismo over the years, and I think we're familiar. The Vision Gran Turismo project is just like make up whatever you want. It's the whose line is it anyway of concept cars. So
here's a concept car. The numbers don't matter. I mean, if you play the game, not half, but maybe a third, you can't even sit in. They didn't even go as far as to make an interior for you. So All right, moving on to one that's a little more real. Well, it is real. Aston Martin brings out the Valiant, which is we'll talk about this more in the F1 segment later because it's based on Alonso's. I don't know. They make it sound like it's his car, but I don't think he designed it. But he has some input, and it kind of, as again we'll talk about it in F1. It kind of shows why he re-signed with Aston Martin, and probably this is his maybe wind down contract, and he'll move into an ambassador, or maybe even like a designer, like maybe they'll be like the Alonso line of cars down the road. So good for him. And this thing looks badass. I mean, it looks it kind of looks like the V8 Vantage of the 90s, but with round headlights. Like it's got a very retro look to it.
Because it's based heavily on Valor, I want to say. I don't know. I've lost track of all the V names for Aston Martin and like all the unobtainable ones in particular. But I'm pretty sure it's based on that, right? But it's a little more power, it's a little more track ready because it's got that big wing and everything. But I mean, in profile in particular, it has wicked proportions.
And it's front engine, which is cool. But the big news: turbocharged V12, awesome. 6-speed manual, more awesome. Like I'm sure Alonso, they're probably like in a board meeting, like, okay, so we're gonna put our dual clutch. No. Okay, we'll put our nice auto. No. Like my name's on that car. It's a manual. So good for him.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome if like Aston Martin keeps the manual alive even for EVs, as long as it's like the Alonso cars.
Good for them.
Sign me up. All right, and speaking of big news, Volkswagen made a massive investment into Rivian, which is good news, I think, all around. It's one of those, you see the story and you're like, awesome, Volkswagen showing how serious they are about EVs. And Rivian, who we both said arguably is one of the better EV makers, they only have basically one car with or without a pickup bed. They can now make all these other ones that look so cool. Like now we'll get that, hopefully, that little rallycross car. So
the R3, yeah. This is fascinating news. I haven't been able to dig into it too much yet this week because of stuff I'll cover later in the podcast too. But it's fascinating because VW is doing pretty solid stuff with their EV lineup, especially across the globe. So it will be interesting to see how much sharing takes place in this partnership. I hope that it doesn't dilute what Rivian has planned. If anything, I'd love to see more stuff, more Rivian influence in VW. And then, of course, this brings up the big question of Scout. Scout's about to relaunch, and like it's supposed to be a more off-roady EV brand. Like there's so many synergies that can happen there, and I hate that I use the word synergies, but this is great news. Yeah, like
Rivian released all those cool concepts, but there's also no secret that they didn't have money. And we had all just kind of written off Scout, like, oh, that would have been so cool. But now it's like that might even be the whole reason Volkswagen got it. Volkswagen can trim the Rivian lineup to make them profitable, use it to double up on Scout, and to use it to double up on EV vans, trucks, SUVs of their own. Mm-hmm. Like that's awesome. And then Volkswagen can use Rivian's motors, which are great. It's just, it's win all around. I guess it's sort of, we'll wait and see how the investment works. But if the Volkswagen group swallows up Rivian and Scout, I mean, we're only talking VW. Like, how could this relate to Porsche, or how could this relate to Audi? Like, there's so much that could be there. So we'll just wait and see. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to talk to Volkswagen about the updated Jetta and GLI that we teased earlier. So you're watching the AutoGuide show, brought to you by eBay Motors, and we'll be back in a little bit.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay, everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle, and to this day I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was, although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings, and other bits. And back then there was no eBay guaranteed fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, welcome back. We have a special guest with us today to talk about the Volkswagen Jetta. If you could introduce yourself for our listeners and viewers and what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Melinda Godec. I am the product manager for Jetta and GLI, along with Taos and Tiguan.
Okay, so all the sort of the family friendly vehicles.
Absolutely. I call it the ICEs from Puebla.
So I was very happy to read the press release that came out a couple days ago that the GLI is keeping its manual transmission. With the
Yeah.
GTI and Golf R losing theirs, what was the reasoning behind it? It's probably more obvious than I know.
hmm You mean in terms of why the GLI kept it instead of the GTI and
Yeah,
R?
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, first, I guess let's start off with the obvious. I think most people recognize the fact that as years go on, um, less and less individuals, especially in the United States, know how to drive manuals. So
Mhm.
each year you do see the take rate decline on the manuals. And with the advancement of automatic technology, you're seeing fuel economy figures being better on the automatics than on the manuals. And I don't want to speak too much for the GTI and the R, and I'm sure that information will come out. But that is a vehicle that is primarily made in Europe, which does have stricter CO2 regulations than we do. I'd say we're very fortunate to have products made in the region, specifically tailored to the region. I mean, if you think back to the launch of the GLI, it was dubbed the GTI with the trunk.
Mhm.
And it was very much made for the American tastes. And so we were very happy to be able to continue to offer the manual. And while the take rate, I have to say, is pretty healthy on the Jetta when we offered it on the base in 24, along with the GLI, we definitely made that decision with enthusiasts in mind. Uh, we do read comments. We do listen to our customers. We know what you guys want, and we love to make you happy. And this is one of those cases where we could give you exactly what you asked for.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's like I said, there's fewer and fewer, and less people are learning to do it. So I'm in like the minority of the becoming the old guys that still like to drive manual, but I'm happy that it's still around in some context.
Absolutely.
So obviously I didn't see the 25 Jetta in person yet, but
Uh-huh.
looking at the pictures, it looks like a big design difference is the dash. It looks like there's a lot of style in there. Can you kind of just briefly go over it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure the biggest change that you're going to see when you look at the images is on the passenger side decor. It does have almost a faux vent look. And I say that because the vent does not actually extend across the entire passenger side of the dash. It does look that way, although the vent still functions as it always does, same range of airflow, no worries there. But it does just bring a bit of sophistication to the interior. I think we've all seen in the industry, uh, regardless of which segment we're talking about, entry sedan all the way up through, the larger SUVs, the interiors are taking a step up. And we do want to follow in that route. However, we also know that our owners of the Jetta, and more in particular the GLI, like to balance really technology and styling. They like a little bit of the classic. If it works, don't change it.
Hmm.
But they do also want some of the newer looks. And to look more modern, right? You want the new car to look a little bit better than the older one did. So our designers, took that to heart and really tried to find some places where they could bring in some modern upscale look without toying too much with what was working and what the customers appreciated.
Yeah, I've noticed in the market in general, there's a trend which I like where interiors are getting more attention again, and there's more sort of nice details and color, and it's not sort of the black rubber and plastic and leather of old. So it's nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another big question with the Jetta is it's a sedan, and sedans are slowly disappearing from our market because sales are declining. But clearly, there's still
Yes.
demand for the Jetta, and you still see them around. Do you have a very specific demographic who buys them, or is it like a couple, or just a wider range of people?
Yeah, I would say like generally for any car, you're going to have some outliers, right? And in terms of sedan basics, right? Like you're always going to have people who buy a sedan just because they want a sedan, or they want, really good fuel economy. Those, regardless of which sedan you're selling, those are going to be some indicators of why people are selecting your model, right? But specific to the Jetta, we see that they're quite young. They generally live in a metro area, which where I think that kind of flows in why they're selecting a sedan. Maybe they could afford an SUV, for example, but they're choosing a sedan not because they like the sedan body style, but it's just a bit more compact where they're living in this metro area. A lot of times parking is pretty difficult to find, or when you do find it, it's a tight squeeze.
Mhm.
They are generally single, also because they're a bit younger. And they're foodies. They love to cook. And we see that they pick the Jetta because of the standard safety features that we offer. And they really do like our exterior and interior styling.
Okay, well, that was kind of my next question: is what are the key purchasing decisions? Just before we get to that, I've driven the Jetta a lot and a lot of compact cars, and I always find the Jetta just feels a little more refined in certain ways. I mean,
Yes.
everyone has their thing. Some go for features for the money, and others for style. But I always found it's a little refined. So the demographic you described makes sense because these are sort of younger people with maybe some more refined tastes. So it makes sense. But
Absolutely.
besides the exterior and safety, is there anything else that's a big factor you see that people want? I mean, the GLA is obviously performance, but just for the
Yeah,
Jetta in general?
definitely. Well, I mean, I'd have to say the manual, right? That is one of the I don't know how many sedans really are left with a manual these days. And seating comfort. Seating comfort comes up time and time again, and I think to the refinement that you mentioned, I think part of it too is just when you sit in a Jetta, it just feels so roomy. Um, and I can't quite put my finger on it why we've gotten that feeling and other competitors haven't. But I do feel it's very airy and open when you sit in a
Hmm.
Jetta versus some of our competitors.
Yeah, it does feel big. I remember sort of when this sort of style started 10 or 15 years ago where it really grew. And I remember it was like the big compact, and now everyone's kind of gotten to the same size because it's the
Yeah,
size people want. And to your point about the manual of the sedan, I started thinking, I mean, I'm sure listeners, viewers will correct me, but outside of like sporty cars like the WRX, that's all they make. I don't know if there are
exactly.
many four doors that have a manual anymore. I know like a lot have lost theirs, but
Yep,
um so
absolutely.
one last question, sticking with the GLI. Have you noticed a difference in a customer that say takes a GLI over a GTI? Because, like you said, it's a GTI with a trunk. So, is there like determining factor or factors you see, or is it just random?
No, I wouldn't say it's random. So first, I'd maybe like to split the GLI customer into two personas. And of course, this is all generalization because everybody's an individual and has their own thing.
Mhm.
But in general, you have the GLI buyer that moves up in the price ladder and says, I want the GLI because it has a bit more performance. It's going to have a quicker acceleration. I can afford it. Maybe get some additional features, some of the sportier features that I like how it makes the car feel when I drive it. It's a bit more comfortable, a bit more responsive. That customer is generally not the same customer as a GTI buyer, right? They're probably going to be a little bit older. They have more disposable income, and again, they're buying it more for the perk of acceleration and how it feels. Now, the other side of the GLI buyer, and one that is a lot closer to the GTI buyer, is what I'll call the GLI enthusiast buyer. We really see this persona pop when we offer things like last year, the 40th edition GLI. We really start to see what type of people those are. They are more obviously wanting the manual, and generally, these are the type of people that still read physical copies of car magazines. These are the individuals who do take their cars to the track, or they add aftermarket products to their vehicle. Their vehicle probably has a name, and there's certain rules of things that can or cannot happen in their vehicle, right? Um, those two people tend to align. However, there is one big difference. We see that the individuals who opt for the GLI over the GTI want a little bit more space. And while it's not proven, I would guess this has to do with their family situation. While neither the GTI buyer or the GLI buyer, this is their single car in the household or their first car or anything like that, it's generally a second or third car. What we see is the GLI buyer tends to have a larger family than the GTI buyer. So a little extra space is not bad, and they tend to not want to stick out as much on the road versus the GTI buyer. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, hatchbacks in the US stick out a bit more than sedans do. So it's a little bit less camouflaged, so to say. But really, those are the only big differences that we're seeing. I'm sure going forward, you will see some individuals opt for the GTI for that additional horsepower bump, and then
Mhm.
maybe you'll see some GTI buyers hop over to GLI for our manual.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Some of the people you described for both buyer sets, I'm visualizing like an exact person I know. I mean, the first one where you said the GTI owners are older, like that's where I am. It's like the mature hot hatch where
Yes,
it's not rough around the edges. My family could go in it. I could still have fun. So no, I totally get it. And the
exactly.
GLI, I had the 40th anniversary in the fall,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And it is very stealthy. People don't know what it is. And it's kind of nice because you just
Exactly.
kind of unassuming sedan ripping around. So, well,
Absolutely.
I thank you so much for your time. You've actually given us a lot of good insight, stuff I didn't know, which is always good. I like to learn new things. So,
Awesome.
thanks. And I
Anytime.
look forward to driving those cars sometime soon. And I'm sure we'll have you
Sure.
back when some of your other models are refreshed or all new.
Yeah, I've got some big product updates this year for my vehicles.
So I might be seeing you a couple more times this year.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right. It's time for another Formula One news and rumors. Colin Wood is back to join us. What do you have for us this week?
Lots of rumors. There's, and I guess maybe let's start with the most boring and most obvious driver news information. That hold on your hats here. Lance Stroll has re-signed with Aston Martin. Can you believe it? His dad's team. Imagine that, right? So that's not a shocker.
No.
Maybe it should
Same
be.
time, Lawrence, I could see kicking his son out if it meant more money. So
Yeah.
you never
Well,
know.
I don't know. I feel like he always says how serious he is about winning a world championship. I'm like, if he was serious, Lance wouldn't be on the team, right? So,
Yeah.
And people say, oh, but look, he's like challenging, Alonso and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, maybe it's time to admit that Alonso's 43 and, is not at the peak of his performance either, right? Like, I think 25-year-old Alonso would whoop 43-year-old Alonso's butt, right? So
Probably.
So we'll see. So there's that, and then the other big driver signing news was that Gasly is sticking on with Alpine. So while they have chosen not to keep Ocon, they are going to keep Gasly, and I guess the rumors still point that this could be another place that Sainz could wind up at, right? So it looks like Sainz options are getting slimmer and slimmer all the time. So he's got to make a move here eventually, or he's going to wind up without a seat, I think. So.
Yeah, he's gonna have to like sign on to like one of like Haas or something just to get a seat. It's like he's waiting for something, but I don't know. Mercedes,
I think so, but I think Mercedes has been clear. So actually, that was one of the pieces. There was an article recently that Toto Wolff said something about this cool. Like, we want to focus on Kimi. That's our future, right? So they are looking at that. I also feel that's a real slap to George at Mercedes, right? If they're like, we already found our future of our team, and it's not the guy we just brought on a year or two ago.
Yeah,
that's like, yikes! Sorry about that, George.
Yeah, well, George is interesting. Like, I really like the guy, and he showed so much talent in Williams for what he had. But I'm Mercedes, like he just hasn't got the consistency down yet. He started really hot. What was last year?
Yeah,
but this year, like Hamilton's outdriving him a lot now, whereas before that wasn't the case.
Yeah, no, he was. Yeah, it's kind of just middling, and I think that's always one of the troubles of even being on a mediocre team, is that you can never really stand out. It's really hard to stand out. Like even like Albon did like great stuff at Williams. It's like, yeah, but we don't really think of it as that great because again, it was Williams, right? So it's a real curse to be on a mediocre team as a good talent. So. The other piece is that so there's a rumor floating around that Logan Sargent may look to sort of save face, maybe, because I think the indication is all that he won't be kept on at Williams, and that apparently he may be going to drive for Prima Racing in IndyCar next year. So I think that'd be, if I was him, that'd be a smart move, right? Save face, move from F1 to IndyCar. You don't have to get fired,
You drive like in your home country or Canada as well. So, ex F1 driver on your title. Yeah, it's probably pretty smart. And then, I mean, that's what a lot of guys have done, right? And some actually improve their skills down there and come back. But,
yeah. It's not a bad thing to do, right? I think for him, it's ideal. There's again the whole idea of being a former F1 driver. You could bring sponsors just based on that, I'm sure, right? So I mean, IndyCar, I'm not slacking on. I think it's actually there's almost more opportunities to win, right? It's a tighter field. Things move around more. You never know, right? So you could potentially go and stand out in IndyCar. Not just on a talent basis. I'm not slacking those guys for saying they're not F1 drivers, but I think that there's this capability of all the just the way that the field's set up. You could actually stand out and be more of a rock star. And I'd rather probably be a Formula One winner or I mean a IndyCar winner than a Formula One 19th place. I don't know. It'd be a tough choice.
Yeah. Hey, you can fight for the championship against Ricardo and Ocon because maybe they all move over there too and they don't have seats.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, Ricardo should go to NASCAR or something. That'd be the best story. It does look like Ricardo will not be renewed though at RB. The rumors again. These guys keep speaking out. Helmut Marko said something recently about how Liam Lawson is the guy they're really looking for the future for that team, and that he said something along the lines of that they really are a feeder team, and they need to not they're not a place for has-beens to float around. They need to be constantly developing that new talent for the main team. So like let's get guys in and give them the chance, and then move them up if they're there, and if they're not, move them out. Right? It's kind of I suspect RB to be almost a harder place to be than the big teams. So I think there will be more seats open, but none of these are places Sainz is going to show up. So you'll see some of these rookies come in. Agreed. So I did see that for the Alpine news, because I know it looks like that seat's like hotly contested, which is funny because you wouldn't think anybody would want to go to Alpine right now. That I guess Mick Schumacher is supposed to test an Alpine in the near future at Paul Ricard to do some testing. So we'll see. That could wind him up. I mean, if I was Alpine, I'd take Sainz out of anybody myself, right? Like, I think he's probably the hottest guy on the grid right now. So
it's interesting with Schumacher. It's interesting because he, like, that's not part of the Mercedes family.
Yeah.
So usually you kind of, you try it for those teams, but this is going completely somewhere else. So
it is, and it's funny how that works out, right? It's kind of like when you move on, it's like you're dead to us, right? Like it's kind of like, again, you saw the guys like Gasly. He left, RB or AlphaTauri at the time, and it's like you can't go back to those people. You need to move on in your career, go to a new place where you're loved, right? It's what's the old saying about a prophet's never respected in their hometown or whatever, right? Like you sometimes you got to leave where you are to get the acclaim that you feel you deserve, right? Sometimes it doesn't work out, like Ricardo. But if you're not getting it where you are, you're not gonna, like, things aren't gonna change. You need to make a move. So
yeah, no, it definitely does. And sometimes you're forced to make a move, and that doesn't really help you in the long term. And that's sort of maybe where Sainz is going. I mean, like Bottas, he was doing great as Lewis's number 2, and then they wanted to bring George up, and he went to Alpha, and he had a good start there, but it didn't really do much.
No, well, they're also, that whole team is just faking it right now until they get the real money from Audi, right? Like, they have no intention of really doing anything. Like, you can imagine what it must be like to work at a place where everyone's just like, well, we're just waiting for the real bosses to show up, so let's just keep phoning it in, show up at the racetrack, give it 75% and go home, right?
I'm sure the real boss is already there in the background working on 2026 or whatever.
Oh, I'm sure there's some good planning. They just can't touch any of it yet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe the only other news, I don't know if you covered this in the rest of the podcast, but this Aston Martin car, the what's it called, the Valiant, that this is the new, like, it's a real, I guess, limited edition car that Alonso worked on, right? So 735 horsepower, twin turbo V12. I mean, there's lots of cool stats. It looks spectacular. It's got kind of like a retro 80s look to it. I just think it's interesting from a F1 perspective that it sort of indicates that Alonso is already starting to take more of a different role within that company, right? And you could see him, maybe he moves into the streetcar business a little bit. We'll see, but I think that there's, like, I do get Alonso's play at Aston Martin is more than just a driver, and I think he's probably always wanted that. I know he's made some jokes if you watch old podcasts about how he'd end up being the head of the FIA or something one of these days, and I think the FIA would rather all hang themselves than have Alonso running the show. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it's just super cool to see. It looks like an exceptional product, and see what Alonso can do at a brand like Aston Martin is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I think that's good for this week. The next 2 weeks we have some interesting and fun things we have planned. So until then, thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, welcome back, Kyle. I know you're gone for the interview and the piece with Column, but you've been busy this week, and so have I. I mean, we've been all over the place. So why don't you give a little insight to where you were and what you got coming up next week?
So I was spending most of the week in Alberta and British Columbia, up here in Canada, with the new Land Cruiser and Tacoma Trailhunter with regular contributor Jeff Wilson. We drove hundreds of miles, kilometers, whichever, camped, climbed a mountain, did a bunch of really cool stuff, saw bears and marmots.
Like the bears?
Like the bears. Not the new season of The Bear, which I'm going to go watch after we do this. But it was, I can't talk about it too much, but because there will be a full story and a video and everything coming, but it was a blast. I will say that it's fairly comfortable to camp in the back of the Land Cruiser. I just wish that the seats folded completely flat, because there's like a inch difference between the seats and the load space. But otherwise, like, I slept in there fine overnight.
Been there, done that in my 20s, but not lately. And yeah, that little difference. So I saw your photos and your socials on it, and it looks incredible where you guys went, like climbing the mountain basically in the cars. So yeah, I look forward to the video because we know Jeff does good work. So
Yes.
we'll have that soon.
And
Well,
then,
before you, okay. Yeah.
oh no. If what else were you?
Oh yeah,
gonna
no,
say?
you did something else this week, right? No, yeah, that's right. I thought you were done with
No.
this week, but that's right. You did something else.
No, it's that I'm going next week. Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, we do have a lot to cover. I have an Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio over the weekend.
Just that.
Yeah, just that. But I just picked it up because I was gone for most of the week. So I'm gonna spend a lot of time with it the rest of the weekend because it's a holiday weekend for us and my birthday. So I'm not doing anything today. But yeah, and then next week we have some vehicles to test. I have a new Lexus with a new powertrain. But then, as we were talking about with the Genesis segment, I am going to be going to the Gran Turismo live event for its World Series of Esports in Montreal. And we know that Genesis will be displaying vehicles there. I don't know if it's going to be this brand new one because it was just in Korea. But I am excited to hear more about the car, and we're going to get info on the next update for the game, which I think is a safe assumption will include said car. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I should be road tripping there in a Genesis, so even better. Speaking of road trips in a Genesis, well, no, I mean, if I can take a Genesis, why not?
Ooh, double content from Kyle. So
yeah,
all of the top PR people from around the world were at the unveiling, including our Canadian friend. So maybe he gets to like chaperone it on an airplane all the way back here. Well, we'll see. So as you said, yeah, for Gran Turismo fans like me, there's an update coming, and it's not just there's an update coming. Usually Kaz just does the silhouettes online, and then they'll announce something, and then the day before they do a trailer with the cars that we've been guessing, and that's that. They've done a pre-announcement saying they're going to announce the next update there. So of course people are irrationally saying there's going to be this track and that track and all this. My personal thinking is it's going to be the Genesis concept you talked about, probably some Genesis cars, because we know I was in LA with them when we talked to Gran Turismo, and they said big things are coming, and then the first VGT came in, and I was just at the Nürburgring with Hyundai where they announced their partnership. So I think new VGT, some of the Genesis cars, at least the GV. Oh no, they did the GV70. Maybe they'll put in the 80, that convertible, maybe an SUV, and Hyundai will get their long-awaited update. And I guarantee Ioniq N, probably the Ioniq N Pikes Peak version, probably the Elantra N. So it's going to be a big Korean update. Do I think the Pikes Peak track's coming that everyone's talking about? No. I still think that may come later or in 8. My reasoning's been the same it's always been, is how do you make that into a World Series or whatever they want to call it event, because you can't race head to head. So it's just going to be a giant time trial. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
Mike,
I'm done with that rant.
What are you up to next?
So, well, this week, let's cover this week first. So this week I had the Ford Ranger Raptor, which was actually really interesting. I don't want to get into too much. I have a video and story coming. I was impressed by some aspects to it. Some others I was expecting a bit more. But the only thing I'll say is, in the Raptor world, what a bargain. I'll just leave it at that. And in between
bargains,
in between driving that, I had a car that retails for over 300,000 US or 400,000 Canadian, and that was the Lamborghini Huracan Sturato. So that is the off-road version of the Huracan, and it's more than just dressing. I mean, it's up about I think 1.7 inches in ride height. It's got more suspension travel. It has specially made all-terrain tires from Bridgestone, but you look at them, they're not as hardcore as the 911 Dakars. Like, those are AT tires, just with low profile. These, I relate them to what you'd see in like the 60s and early 70s when like a sports car had sport tires, like with those S's and like there's like 4 like big chunks of them. So yeah, like it would be way better in like sand and dirt, but this isn't gonna climb trails or do the Dakar. But the body cladding makes it look cool. This had the front driving lights. It had the crossbars, which I would have liked off because it kind of ruins the profile, but at the same time, it adds to the persona. I don't want to get into too much more. It was awesome. Let's just say driving a bright yellow brand new Lamborghini around neighborhoods that they don't see them, you get a little attention. Just a little.
Huh. That's so weird.
Yeah, I'm going to do more of that later. But one little tidbit is I stopped at a store, walked in, bought the dog food my dog always has. So 3 minutes, walked out, a guy with a long scale lens, taking a photo shoot of my car. Well, not my car, but of the car. 3 other people standing around it. In 3 minutes, this happened. That was pretty much the norm for the week. So, yeah.
Jeez.
All right. So next week, I am heading out on the rally that I talked about months ago. So I will be with Genesis as well. I'm not with them, but I'm driving a GV80, and I will be taking my father and my son for 3 generations drive. We will be actually on TV this year with it. I will be live covering it on social. I will be getting video of it, and at least probably 2 stories, one on the event, one on the vehicle. I've never done video on one of these, so we'll see how it comes out. I'll just be shooting like Gonzo style the entire week, and then we'll see what I end up with. Could just be me having to voice over some random footage, but yeah, we're going to Camp Sunshine. I'll put a link at the description of this video if you want to help donate. Next week, we actually have the 2 organizers and founders of Rally North America on, and they will get into sort of how the rally started, what we try to do, and how much money we've raised. Spoiler alert, it's 2.6 million in 14 plus years now. So, and it's all word of mouth, no soliciting. It's just us asking friends and family. So yeah, it's awesome. So I take off Friday, and then next week, Kyle will be doing this solo or with a guest host. You'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll find out. It's a surprise.
Oh no, wait. I'm gonna ahead of myself. I'm here next week. It's the week after.
Oh,
I'm here next week. Yeah, because I leave Saturday morning, so I'm here to record Friday like we always do. It's the week after I won't be here.
All right. Well then, sweet.
So that's it. It sounds like we both have busy weeks ahead, and then you hold down the fort for a week and a half, and then I hold down the fort for a week and a half. So it's a busy summer.
Yeah, it's almost like summer. Everyone makes plans.
Yeah, all the fun cars and all the fun plans.
Yeah, sweet. Well,
all right,
that's it.
Well, I think it's time to head out. You've heard from us enough. So this has been the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. We will be back next week with a lot of updates, and maybe Kyle and I can talk more about his trip in my Lambo. We will see.
Yes.
All right, take it easy.
So long, everyone.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.